I have received a lot of questions from people asking me what I actually mean when I say that the past did not happen the way that you think that it did. The first thing I want to clarify is that I know that a lot of spiritual teachers say that the past didn't happen at all, that that is not at all um, what occurred. And it's not exactly how we work with it. It's not how we see it. If you get something in your eye, you will still try to get, that fly out of your eye, even though that we might not have an eye the way that we think that we do, and the fly might not be what we think that it is, but that is about perception. There is something physical, actual there. We just don't know what it is. But that is not really what I want to talk about. I'd like to talk about that part that confuses a lot of people. That when I say the past didn't happen the way that you think, a lot of people hear it as if I'm gaslighting and saying that the violent experience that you had as a child did not happen at all. And again, it's not what we are pointing to. We're pointing to two things. The first thing is that the way that you perceive reality is not how reality is. It's just your perception. The only way we can engage with the world is via our senses, via our perception. But how we experience those sensory experiences, the seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching, it has an overlay of thought. Those thoughts or that perception is always shaped by your biochemistry in the moment, by your psychological stability and emotional maturity. So, what you experience in the moment is not true. It doesn't have anything true in it. It's just an experience. It's just a perception, an assumption, a judgment of what is happening. It's not true, like set in stone, absolute true. It's just what is perceived. And by knowing that, there's a lot of the suffering in our lives that absolutely fall away. If you at any point you experience something that creates suffering in you, can have the clarity of mind and the mindfulness and the awareness of mind in that moment to question what it is you perceive. Am I actually perceiving this, or is this what I think I'm perceiving? And really having that separating. I'm going to talk about that in another video because that's a whole thing on its own. So the first thing is that whatever you perceived as a child was based on your psychological stability, on your emotional maturity, and the biochemistry in your body at that point. Now, obviously, your psychological stability and emotional maturity was not fully developed when you were a child, which means that whatever you perceived, you would create an overlay, an understanding that fit with the mind of a 5-year-old, 7-year-old, 12-year-old. Your brain is not fully developed until you're 19. So whatever you perceived in that moment could only create an understanding of what happened with the biochemistry, psychological stability, and emotional maturity at that point. So when you're 5, you perceive the world completely different. You have just understood that there is a me here and there's somebody out there. At that point, we are very much trying to create alliances, and we're still very, very dependent on our parents to love us. We would do anything, and we normally do two things if something happens that creates a conflict in us. Either we leave the self, we leave the body, the experience in the body to maintain the relationship with our parents, or you leave the relationship with the parents to maintain an autonomy in your body. And that is what is later on creating the personality that what I call the aggressive bully that is driven by cortisol, or the passive aggressive bully that is driven by the thyroid hormones. It creates two different ways of being in the world based on the nervous system. That either you have the fight flight way of being in the world, or you have the flight freeze way of being in the world. So whatever you experienced as a child was experienced with the brain of that age that you had, with the understanding of the world that you had at that point. Now, if you remember my teachings back in the first feta, where I talk about that everything we experience um, is understood by the mind, understood by the brain. And by that, we create what I call a post-it. That is the little understanding that we have. And when we create a post-it, everything we experience after that is based on the post-it, not on the actual experience. And that leads me to the second point. Our brain is built in a way that when there are things we don't understand, we create that understanding in ourselves. So we make up an understanding. You know that from your life that if you find a bruise on your leg, on your shin, you will immediately think, oh, it must be when I bumped into the sun deck chair or the dishwasher lid, or it must be when I did something. Immediately you create a story that is absolutely made up. You do not know if that is where when the bruise happened, but the mind does that all the time. It's why we really don't like to watch movies that doesn't have an ending that makes sense with the mind. You know, the conscious mind needs to make sense. It's what it does, and it's what it loves to do. So whatever is happening in the moment, if it doesn't make any sense, the mind just makes something up. The mind is creating stories all the time. We know that from those split brain um, experiments that we have made with people that have a split brain, that they see something with one eye. They might see, a glass of water, and then they get up to get a glass of water. And if you ask them, what is it you're getting up to do? They don't know with the conscious mind what it is they're getting up to do. They know that they got an input, but it's not the same part of the brain that is getting up to get something, to get the glass of water. So they will just make stuff up. Oh, I'm up because I heard somebody knock on the door, or they just make shit up. And it's not only them that does that. We can just see it because we so clearly can experiment with them, poor people, experiment with them so we can see how the brain actually works. You do the same all the time. And what you're making up about is never about the original experience. It's always about the post-it. It's about the story that you created about it. So when we think about our past, when we think about our childhood, you're never ever thinking about the childhood. You're thinking about the last thought you had about your childhood. And this thought that you have now about your childhood is what you're going to be thinking of next time, not your childhood, because it's not how the brain works. And the problem with that is that when we have experienced something when we were 5, slowly, every time you think back on it, your brain is maturing, your psychological stability is maturing, your emotional maturity is maturing, which means every time you think of it, you click the reboot button, which means that you no longer, for every time you do that, you get further and further away from the actual experience. You cannot think of anything that is exactly how it happened. You can only think of how you perceived it to happen. And next time you think of that, you will think of the last time you thought of how you perceived it to happen. That is why I call it post-its. Because it's like something is happening. You create an understanding of of what it is that is happening. So somebody drives in front of you in traffic and you think, oh, they're certainly in a hurry. Um, they must be, having a pregnant woman in the car and they are on the way to a hospital. That is the thought that you have. Or you have an idea of, what an asshole. He's just, coming in front of me in traffic and he's trying to hold me back. That is the post that you're creating because you have no bloody idea what is happening in anybody else but your perception of it, right? So that post-it you build on it is what you think about the next time and the next time and the next time. And if you have a thought like, you know, people hate me, people out to get me, or like I talked about before, the aggressive bully that has that idea of the fight or the flight. Everybody's out to get you. Everybody is pointing at you not being good enough. So you have to perform and perform and perform. That is the post-its that you're building on top of one another. And at the end, you don't even know where that started because the original experience that you had as a child is long gone. And you have clicked the reboot button so many times that it no longer makes any sense. Like I have in another session where I talk about um, that you might have put the yellow beads in with the blue beads. There was somebody that reacted to that video so much that was like, that is absolutely preposterous. Nobody would feel bad about putting yellow beads into the blue beads. No, with an adult mind, you wouldn't. But with a child at a certain age, you definitely would. If you're 7 when that happened, 7 is the little policeman of the family that is doing things right. And when they do things wrong, their entire worlds are crumbling. So if for a 7-year-old to put the wrong beads in and being told they don't go in there, is the entire world crumbling. There will then be a lot of issues that are posted, put on that. I am not good enough. I should be better. I should be more diligent. I should be more aware. I should be. And all of that becomes the new truth, the new underlying belief. And that is what you're shaping the next experience on the post-it. So the next somebody goes like, no, don't cut the carrots like that. You will feel the same. Oh my God, I'm failing again. I'm failing again. Because that is the underlying belief that that nervous system and that biology has created. And that becomes the foundation for everything you perceive in your life from that on. It's why we're putting so much emphasis on really inquiring, noticing that the only experiences you can have can be sensory. That's a seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, nothing else. Then there's a mental overlay of the seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touch. I'm going to make another video where I talk about that. But that is basically the mental formations you create about something. If I say strawberry, you might have a a visual image of a strawberry. You might smell it or taste it. That is the mental overlay of the sensory experiences. And even that can be picked apart. That is what we're pointing to when we talk about living an examined life. So, and it's also why we created the First Feather course for you. So you really can inquire into all these underlying beliefs that you have, that you believe, but this is how it happened. I know this is how it happened. We'd like for you to really, really question that underlying belief that you have because it can't be. It can't be. It can only be your perception, your judgment, and your assumption about what happened. It cannot be what really happened. So if you have experienced trauma in your life, and if you have experienced things that have created deep scars in you, we have so much compassion and love for you. And we are definitely holding your hand during this process. You're not alone in this. You're not the only one working with this. And like I said in the First Feather course, that is so much material that is helping you to really, really, really dive in and question the experience that you have. It's on our homepage. It's only $49 for the full course, and you have like 4 months of full work with seeing into all these types of identification with your thought. But if you have like that underlying feeling of and memories of a violent childhood, let's say, what we would like for you to do is instead of just copy pasting your assumption about what happened, then really feel into your direct experience of how is that happening right now? What is it when I'm thinking about my past that I experience now? Is it an auditory? Do I hear somebody yell at me? Is it physical? Do I viscerally feel how I was beaten? Do I smell the other person's breath in whatever happened? How is this coming up right now? How does this feel to be real right now? And then just know that that is just a thought. It's a thought that is playing a record player of your last thought about it. It's like, one of those videotapes in stores where they record over what the next day and the next day and the next day. So it's not the recording from the first day that was the opening in the store. It's the recording from yesterday. And that is basically how it is with our brain as well. So I'm not saying that the scars you have on your body that they're not there. There clearly are. Like I started by saying that the fly in your eye, you clearly have an eye and there's clearly a fly. We just don't know what that actually is, that eye or that fly. We know how it is perceived and we know how it feels in the body, but we can also investigate the thoughts about that. And the thoughts about it is never the real experience. It's just the thoughts about it. I hope that clarified. And if not, kindly leave a comment below so I can go into more depth with this. Or you can also, that's another thing, you can also join our inquiry group. We have an inquiry group that is absolutely free every single month where you can ask us all these questions. Thank you. We have created a course of our first Feta material. This course will walk you step by step through all of the ways in which identification is created and selfing happens. If you've been struggling to see through the self-structure or have that first awakening shift, this course contains hundreds of tools to help you discover the selfing mechanisms when they're happening, and then see through the illusion of identification that are created. Along with over 14 hours of videos, this $49 course contains a full book worth of summaries, extrapolations on the videos, written inquiry suggestions, and other text. So work slowly, leave time for integration. This is powerful material and it can be life-changing.